I've got a quick clip that I want you to respond to.
Mhm.
It basically touches on what you just said. So let's play it real fast.
Have you been able to cure so far?
I would say one.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
Yeah. The idea of any, you asked me about the issue about how many people I've cured. I don't know that any of us are ever completely cured of anything.
I have not been able to cure many patients.
I have cured none of my patients.
So I bring that video up because, and you made a very interesting point about therapy as an industry kind of catering to women.
Mhm.
One of the things I've been talking about is the the reality, at least today, and I think it's pervasive with everything, particularly in the male female war dynamic. But men are incapable of seeing themselves as victims, and women are incapable of seeing themselves as perpetrators. And I think
Mm.
part of the reason, like, there's the media component, but there's also like the academic component, like I brought up earlier, but also the therapy component that basically says, whether overtly or covertly, the person who identifies the problem or a problem is the victim of the problem, as opposed
Mm.
to somebody who could be being framed as the victim is actually, as the perpetrator is actually the victim, and vice versa. And I came across some research that apparently talk therapy as an industry was invented for women. What are your thoughts on that? What is your, I guess, as somebody in behind the curtain, like what's your perspective on how the industry and the rise in its popularity kind of contribute to the intergender dysfunction?
Yeah, I actually agree with a lot of your findings, and I've looked at those myself. And then when we look at the results, I think it's kind of clear that it's primarily catered to and for women. Now, the issue from a from a from a clinician perspective and from a professional perspective, when you think about it, is like we're supposed to be trained to not only use evidence-based models that have data to back up why it is that we're offering this therapeutic approach and intervention versus this one with this particular person versus this one, right? And then also we're supposed to do what's called cultural awareness, cultural adaptations. We're supposed to factor in cultural differences to cater how we're trying to do this work with people based off their ethnic background, based off their history, based off of whether they have trauma or not, based off of linguistic issues, et cetera, et cetera. And the issue is that when you get all this training about cultural nuance, cultural differences based off of ability or physical limitations, intellectual issues, racial issues, by default, it's catering to women. And whether or not you're dealing with an adolescent, a child, or an adult, even the elderly, all of these are cultural adaptations, cultural awareness about the nuanced, unique perspective of the person who's representing coming from the particular population. The issue is that when you factor in all these different things that they want us to factor in, and my 10 years of doing this, never in my graduate studies, never in any trainings, not nationally recognized, not evidence-based, nothing. And I've done thousands of hours of training. And I'm even training other clinicians um, across the country. Has it ever come up about the unique experiences and psychological, emotional, and sociological perspectives of males or men?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's already defaulted for women. That's why so many of them love to do it. So that's just that's the normal part of being culturally aware. Is a lot of these theoretical approaches heavily lean into what women are wanting and looking for anyway. But if there's such a high dropout rate, and there's such a huge percentage of men that just don't see the benefits of it and don't like it, rather than saying, well, maybe the field needs to create adaptations and components to factor and cater in the unique perspectives and challenges that comes with being a man in society or a boy in society. They just say that men and boys are broken, and that if they just start to learn, behave, and utilize the techniques and strategies that women use that makes them feel good, it makes them feel heard. Basically, if they act like women, they'll be better. That's in essence what you're basically saying and teaching, both in the educational setting, especially in
Yeah.
grade school,
Yep.
as well as when you're factoring in behavioral interventions or lack thereof, as well as in the mental health space. So what the result is, what this leads to when you get to those psychiatrists you just showed, when boys don't act like the girls, they get the higher diagnostic rate of, oh, they have ADHD.
Mm.
We got to give them some pills for that. And I'm like, okay, but if boys naturally are going to be a little bit hyper than girls, and they're going to be a little bit rougher with how they engage and have fun, and there's not a space to be allowed to do that in a healthy way, and they don't get nearly as much time to do that as their bodies probably need to, higher likelihood of getting in trouble, higher likelihood of getting educational plans, behavioral modifications that moves them into certain classrooms or other schools, and so starts the pipeline. So when you do it on the mental health side, this is how relationships fall apart, because a lot of men don't feel heard. They feel like when they walk into these spaces, and talking about in the therapeutic space, they feel like it's 2 against 1. They believe that she intentionally or unintentionally stuck with a therapist that already agrees with her. And now she's constantly being validated and backed up with her sidekick, who can just,
Yeah.
now that you have this level of authority that you can back up, that now you got this professional backup. Now he's looking crazy when he's saying, but I'm living with you. I'm doing life with you. And I see the version of you that you're not projecting or sharing that also contributed to how we got here. So
Yeah.
only the therapists who are really good at figuring out a way to validate both groups, both individuals simultaneously. And even when they're meeting with just a woman one-on-one, being able to help her understand and see things from another perspective other than her own, which is a huge challenge, is getting a lot of these women who, when frustrated, when upset, struggle with seeing things outside of their own perspective, and they functionally become extremely solipsistic. It takes a while and a lot of work, not just one-on-one, but especially when their partner is next to them and the focus is on how they're not living up to being a great wife, girlfriend, or partner. That's a lot for them to try to endure and do in real time. And you man, the countless times therapists have said the first time or second time they tried to hold her accountable and point out things she needs to work on, and the amount of times that they don't return as a couple is like, whoa, like, so we've been talking about him for the last 3 weeks, and now when we finally talk about you, now we don't want no more sessions. That's a real that's a real experience for a lot of experienced clinicians, man. So yeah, man, I think the field is heavily just skewed, and they're operating through that lens that if men act more like women, process more like women, communicate more like women, all will be well. And the problem is, even in the sessions when guys start to try to do it, a lot of ladies are learning that maybe what you're calling emotional intelligence is really code for him communicating in the way that I like without telling me things I don't want to hear. That's what you actually mean by emotional intelligence. You don't mean he's telling you when you're not living up to your duties, when you've lied, when you're upset with him about who he's following or what he's liking on social media while your page is open and you busting it wide open for everybody to like and share on your page, but you have one standard for him and another standard for you. Like, a lot of them don't mean what they think. They don't actually mean what emotional intelligence actually is. And I would venture to say, and I think I think I've heard from you say something similar. A lot of ladies don't actually want emotionally intelligent men. They really don't. They really don't. So a lot of them, I think they're believing that because they went to therapy and their partner hasn't, they have a one-up mentality where they feel like he has to now meet me. And I'm like, is a whole lot of broken people who are constantly being validated in their brokenness. And because they're single and because they went to therapy, they've convinced themselves they've grown a lot further than they actually have.